Garland Nixon, who joins us now from the United States. He's been harassed, harried, and cancelled so many times on different branches of social media. I've quite lost track. All I know is I myself am missing his output. And I know from my own social media that many people are also. So Garland Nixon, welcome back to the show. It's, of course, not the most important issue, but just bring us up to date on where your own profile is now. Are you still locked out of Twitter? What can we do to influence it if you are?
No, actually, yes, I still am locked out of my Twitter. Again, Twitter has, the last thing that happened was they instructed me that the account that I've had since 2009, the account that I actually pay for, I paid for an entire year for a verified account. They've instructed me that they cannot verify that I own that account. And so I'm locked out of that account. They've told me that I'm free to open another account, which how would they verify me with the second one? I don't know, but I am getting closer to taking the action necessary to get this situation adjudicated, and I'll just leave it at that.
You don't want us to get involved, but just tell us when you do, and we'll mobilize the masses to bring the case in front of the people who need to know about it. Let's turn first to San Francisco. If you're going to San Francisco, be sure to wear some flowers in your hair, as the song went long before you were born. I now realize from the lack of recognition in your eyes at my metaphor, but it is a zany kind of place. And Joe Biden was in particularly zany form. Perhaps it was the haze, the marijuana haze in the city. How do you account for Joe Biden's behavior at the conference?
Well, I mean, certainly, if you look at the conference there, the person that, of all people to really pity, I felt sorry for Anthony Blinken. Certainly, it was very interesting summit in that a number of oligarchs, Tim Cook was there and Elon Musk, and they all gave Xi Jinping a standing ovation, making it clear that a large faction of the ruling elite is making a great profit off of the Chinese market, and they certainly don't screw that up. I think that was extremely important, an important aspect of that conference. But then, of course, needless to say, at some point, when a microphone was stuck in front of Joe Biden, he again referred to Xi Jinping as a dictator and made a fool of himself. I think when I look at that, my immediate reaction is the ruling elite are actually mocking us. To put Joe Biden out there and to pretend that he is in charge of anything, that he is making decisions, is a mockery of politics, and it insults our intelligence when we all know better. So it again raises the question that we all ask: who really is calling the shots? Because Joe Biden is clearly confused. It appears that they had discussed the issues with him beforehand, and I suspect that when he got in front of the camera, he just blurted out the first thing that came to his addled brain.
Dazed and confused he may be, but you may well have him for another 5 years, even if he has to be pickled and a stick put up his back to keep him upright. Can the American rulers really be serious about running this man for election again next November?
Well, it is remotely possible, but I don't see how they can do it. We can certainly see that Gavin Newsom is the person who set up this summit. He's the one who went to China and met with Xi Jinping. He's the one who welcomed people when they got there. So certainly there is a move amongst the ruling elite to replace Joe Biden with Gavin Newsom. Certainly Donald Trump is leading by far in the Republican race. And the likelihood is that if he were to go against Joe Biden, again, I can't see how they can. Joe Biden couldn't do a debate against Donald Trump or anyone else, so I don't know how much longer they can hide this thing. But Donald Trump, to me, would certainly be the person who would likely win. The only issue being the ruling elite don't want Donald Trump, and I find it hard to believe that since we have no democracy whatsoever in this country, that the people of the Republican Party who want Donald Trump will be able to have their wishes granted. I just see the ruling elite using all machinations they possibly can to stop Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, you inadvertently, from my point of view, open up, if you like, the big enchilada there, Garland. To what extent is it possible to continue to describe our countries, yours, mine, Germany, perhaps in the front rank, as democracies? I mean, I'm so old, I remember when we endlessly sneered at the rest of the world, who had no free speech, whose police were apolitical, who had a civil service that was neutral, that had a government and an opposition, which had opposition views, and a real dichotomy existed. We had a free press, in your case, guaranteed by the Constitution. Now we're overseeing the mass murder of journalists in Gaza. Julian Assange is rotting in a London jail, waiting to rot forever in an American jail. The media is virtually 100% behind the prevailing orthodoxy. No one else can get a look in. If you go on a protest, you're called the enemy within, put on the FBI's watch list, and you might well end up, on a terrorism charge. It's really a parody of democracy that we now, quote unquote, enjoy, isn't it?
Yes, and they've actually turned democracy inside out. If you look at the attack on protesters, recently at the DNC headquarters in Washington, D.C., a group of protesters led by rabbis protested in front of the DNC headquarters. Admittedly, they were mostly Democrats. The DNC headquarters was closed. They sent a bunch of goons out. They beat the devil out of these people. You can go online and find the videos. They just mercilessly beat the protesters, threw some of them downstairs. So not only do we not have a democracy, our government is at war with its constituents, does not represent the constituents. And it's obvious that the biggest fear in a totalitarian dictatorship, such as the one I live in, is uprising of the masses. And so now they're working to stop the masses from uprising, because the masses are finally figuring out that these people do not represent them whatsoever.
You mentioned the rabbis. I mean, one of the things that will stand out when the history of the last 40 days is written, and I suspect it will be writ large, is the enormous importance, salience even, of American Jews in the demand for a ceasefire, a demand for justice in Palestine, a breach with Netanyahu and his gang. This is all quite significant, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's game over for Zionism. I think the reality is, if you look at the international power brokers, the international finance people, Zionism is no longer of any value to them. Zionism is a problem to the people who run things, and they are doing what they need to do. I think, let me give you an example. If you look at Saudi Aramco, one of the most powerful corporations in the world, Amin Nasser is the CEO. I think it was July, he joined the board of directors of BlackRock. So they are annihilating, they are destroying Palestine. But at some point, Palestine needs to be rebuilt, doesn't it? Right now, Ukraine's being destroyed, but at some point it needs to be rebuilt. If you look at BlackRock, they are now set for the rebuilding of Ukraine. And I would suspect that when it's time to rebuild, I've said Palestine, when it's time to rebuild Gaza, you will see the Saudis, you will see BlackRock set to come in there also. So I suspect they're going to do away with the extremist leaders one way or another. The extremist Zionist leaders of Israel will be out of power, and they will make their move to make a difference, to change the Middle East so that Zionism doesn't dominate it. Zionism doesn't cause all the conflict. And then they can, as MBS said once before, they can turn the Middle East into the New York.
Yeah, I mean, they count on the fact that I don't want to put it too harshly, let's say the collaborating Arab rulers will forever be able to guarantee quietude on the part of their countries. But that flies in the face of all human development. I mean, if you take a country like Jordan, for example, where the majority of the population are themselves Palestinian, and where another 20% of the population are actually Iraqi, Saddam loyalists, family members, everything. You've got a mix in which it's exceedingly unlikely that forever the people of Jordan can be kept quiet, tame partners of Netanyahu. Ditto in Saudi Arabia. I've never been inside MBS's mind, but I'm pretty sure he's a smart guy. And that's why he's taking the kind of stance that he is taking, and he may have to take far more belligerent ones. So from the point of view of these oligarchs that you speak of, they're going to have to move and move and move their position if their people are going to remain in power.
Well, I suspect, and I see MBS as a businessman, and quite frankly, a smart businessman. So if we get away from the morals of what's happening here, which certainly people like us are absolutely outraged over the death, and we consider the lives of the innocent and the average person. But if we start talking about international finance, we look at, I think, at the end of this. When they are able to bring this conflict to a close, I think they probably feel that if they're able to unseat the Netanyahu's, Smotrich's et al., they're able to bring in a more moderate wing of politics into Israel. They're able to do some type of a two-state solution or some kind of a resolution. They can then say to the Arab masses, we have finally resolved this. That can kind of quell the Arab masses, and then they can get to the part that is their real concern, which is as the international capital turns towards the global south, the global South, Africa, et cetera, they can kind of see the Middle East as the doorstep to that, the Middle East as a place where they can bring in labor, they can do all kinds of things through the Middle East. But I see the connections between BlackRock and the leadership of Saudi Arabia as a very important factor that we should keep an eye on. But I don't think this thing spreads like a lot of people do. I think ultimately what happens is they unseat the more radical wing of the Zionists in Israel and try to bring this thing to a close so they can move forward and make money, because that's what really the plan here.
Lastly, Garland, and I'm always grateful for your time, where sits the literati, the glitterati, the Hollywood chattering classes, the Me Too movement, feminists galore, and all of that? Where sit they on what's happening in Gaza? I mean, the champions of women's rights seem to have been quite quiet about the mass murder of thousands of women and even more children in the last 40 days. Where do the stars align in this conflict? Or are they too scared to stand up and be counted?
The sad place is they're waiting for directions from their masters. They're kind of being quiet. They see that there are certainly issues that could cause them, a large, let's face it, Hollywood's there to make money, though you wouldn't know it from the kind of movies that they're putting out these days. But they're waiting to be directed by their masters. What do we move? What do we do next? They don't want to offend too many people to stop themselves from selling tickets. So I think they're kind of sitting on their powder right now. They're now, for the most part, they're told to be quiet, wait till this thing blows over, and we'll get ourselves together. I mean, you can look at the Marvels movie, recent Marvels flop movie that's coming out. People have had it up to here with the woke, we're going to have all female superheroes that are diverse and all that kind of. People are tired of that. They just want a good movie with some aliens and some monsters and things of that nature, like a good old fashioned movie. And so I just think obviously, they seem to be laying low and waiting for the heat to blow over. That's what I would say Hollywood's doing.